Good. All right. We're welcoming people in, and we'll get started in just a sec. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Jeff, for putting this together. And thank you to our guests for coming. We're excited. And yeah, what a great, what a great Sunday morning.
All right, well, to refresh everyone's memory, we're learning about burrowing owls today because they were selected by all of us as our favorite local critter in San Diego County. Yeah, so, here we are in the middle of World Cup madness with 32 teams. We had 32 species that we selected from. It was a hotly contended race. There were even a few plants that made it past the first round, which impressed some of us. But lo and behold, Burrowing Owl was our winner. And I was delighted because I am very fortunate to know a burrowing owl expert. And so that was a coincidence that led to today's presentation. So about 6 years ago, if I'm remembering the timeline accurately, I was able to hire Sarah Hennessy, Dr. Sarah McCullough Hennessy, who's here with us today, to help develop our montane forest conservation strategy. So some of you came out on our recent trip up to Palomar Mountain. Others have been up to the Benavilla Pines, to the pines up there, the forests of Southern California. So I hired Sarah to help write that plan, and she's one of the lead authors of the Montane Forest Conservation Strategy to save Southern California's disappearing montane forests. I hired her to do that, because of the work she had done for the burrowing owl. So I knew about what she had done to synthesize scientist input into a burrowing owl strategy, but I've never heard her talk about burrowing owls, other than in the initial interview. So I'm super excited today to hear what she has to say about burrowing owls, because that's the part I haven't heard yet. And I'm just grateful that she was willing to come and share this information with us today. So please welcome Dr. Sarah McCullough Hennessy.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. And I do have a deck of slides, but there they are. It's been 6 years since I talked about burrowing owls, but it's been a pleasure to think about the species again and to put together a talk for you all. There is a branch of my family that is Unitarian, or was a couple of generations ago. So I've never been in a UU church, but it's not completely unfamiliar to me. And I came out of, you can probably imagine, this is San Diego, so I came out of the San Diego Zoo. I did my Ph.D. at San Diego State University. That's when I started working in this system. This was part of my Ph.D. work, and then was hired on at the zoo as a postdoc and then a researcher. But I'm not going to give a research type talk today. I loved the story during the service about the burrowing owl family. Made me laugh. There were some basic truths in that story that I'm going to point out in this talk. There were also some things that were not very close to being true. Next slide. I put together a talk that covers a lot of the natural history of the burrowing owl, organized by some pieces that I think might have resonance for the congregation. So we'll talk first about the community that the burrowing owl is a part of, and then move on to courtship, and then parenting, and end with some comments about conservation of the species. Next slide. The burrowing owl is a small owl. It's sometimes known as the ground owl. It has really long, knobby legs. Someone I worked with used to refer to it as a dirt clod with knees. This is a juvenile. You can tell because it has a creamy, solid breast. The adults have streaky feathers on their fronts. It's the only owl. It's a widespread species, so they occur across the Great Plains up into Canada, and then down parts of the East Coast into Florida. That's where the burrowing owl in the story was. And then all the way through South America, just not in the rainforest. So a really widespread species. There are also some owls in the Caribbean, I think, the Caribbean islands. And next slide. Wherever they are, they associate with a burrowing mammal. They don't quite have the ability to dig the full burrow systems themselves. So in California, they associate with this species, California ground squirrel. I grew up partly in West Texas, and we had burrowing owls on the golf course there, and they were associated with prairie dogs. And I'm curious, of all of you, how many of you have seen a burrowing owl in Southern California? A couple. Safari Park. Has anybody seen a burrowing owl not in California? And where was that?
Aruba and Brazil.
Okay. He said Aruba and Brazil, and so honestly, I'm not sure what burrowing species they would have associated with, but I'm going to go and look it up afterwards. Next slide. And so the burrowing owls are a member of a really diverse grassland food web that is created by the burrowing mammal. Here it's the ground squirrel. The California ground squirrel doesn't get very much respect, but my research actually was more about the squirrel than it was about the owl, because the owls rely on the burrowing mammal so much, and not just them. Yeah? Go ahead. Sorry? It just in Southern California, they're pretty opportunistic, and so I guess I'm speaking more historically, because practically you will find them using all sorts of structures as burrows, including PVC pipes, and artificial burrows, but historically in California, this was the dominant way that the system was organized. And California ground squirrel was so important that we think of them as an ecosystem engineer. Sorry, if I don't have this, let me know what to do. But historically, the populations of ground squirrel were much greater, and so their effect was that much more. When the early Spanish colonists were exploring the Great Valleys of California, they would write comments in their journals about how they were afraid that their horses were going to break their legs because there were so many burrows. There were also observations that the California grizzly would come down from the mountains out into the valleys and dig up burrow systems because they were preying on whatever they could get out of them. And that's because the burrow systems are shared by everybody else in the grassland, essentially, and supports both very, very rich and diverse prey and predators populations. So next slide. Burrowing owls, I heard a question about migration and where the owls are. In Southern California, we have both kinds. We have resident owls who live here year-round, and we have migratory owls who are only here in the winter. The work that I did down here was on our resident populations, which have been declining. But those resident populations, they, at the beginning of the breeding season, which would be February. They will find a nice burrow. The male will return first and claim a burrow and establish it, and then the females arrive sometime after that. When I was a researcher, we were trying to create a burrowing owl, a breeding population in an ecological reserve that we thought would be very good habitat. And as part of that work, we were bringing owls in. We were translocating them from other places. And we really wanted them to, before they just flew away and left, we really wanted them to look around them and to think about whether they were in a good place. And so we used an acclimation period, and we constructed acclimation enclosures. This is a photo of one. And would put them up around a burrow. These were artificial burrows, but a place where the owl had above ground and below ground protection, and this was for a period of 2 weeks. And then after that acclimation period of 2 weeks, we would have a day where we came in, the owls were shooed into the burrow was closed up so that they would not be traumatized by what we were doing. And then we would take apart the enclosure, cart it away, and then the last part of the day was that we'd uncork the burrow entrance and then back away to a safe distance. And the time that I am thinking of, it was quite a big day. We had quite a few biologists observing at the end of the day, and we had the zoo media out there. And we knew that the first owl had emerged out of the burrow because a male from an adjoining burrow complex swooped in right away. And this was a crowd of biologists, so we all knew what was happening. It was a copulation event. So it was sort of unceremonious, but they'd had a couple of weeks at that point of looking at each other through the walls of the enclosure. But they do pair for multiple years, and there are courtship behaviors. The male and the female will preen each other. They will work on the burrow together, especially at the beginning of the season. They will work to enlarge the entrance of the burrow, and they will carry in dung of a predator. And here I saw it with coyote dung, and that is to mask the scent of the burrowing owls who are living in the burrow. And here's an example of what the adults look like with that streaky front that they develop over time. Next slide. They lay clutches. I know in the story.
What was this?
It was a nuclear group, and they had 2, but they usually lay up to 60 eggs. That's pretty common.
Okay. I had the
and
going and blah, blah, blah. Wait a
so it's a
minute.
big family. The chicks emerge,
Okay.
and they don't have feathers.
No, now I can hear you.
This is an illustration of what we referred to as the cuddle huddle stage.
Well, I started to, and I got some
the eyes aren't open, and they
hubble bubble on the
and keep themselves safe.
answer machine or something.
And then the feathers start coming in, and they
Leave a
graduate
message, but I did call you.
into their pterodactyl phase. But they're still inside the burrow. Next slide. And the feathers have come in a bit more, and they are large enough and feeling braver and more adventurous. They start wandering out of the burrow. And at first, they'll stay close to the burrow entrance.
Yeah, that's right.
Adults
Yeah.
provision them with food every day. If danger comes near, they all pile into the tunnel. You have a defensive mechanism.
So, I guess I'll say.
They are being threatened. The
That's all
babies make a
bad
rattling
now,
sound.
and
And
I
altogether,
don't really enjoy
when you
this
have a
place
bunch
where I
of
live,
8,
but
young rattling at you.
talk with my daughters about it, and
It
we
gives
can't
you
think
that
of any
sense of,
place
oh my
that
gosh,
would
I'm
be
about to get bit by a
more
rattlesnake.
suited, so here I am.
And I do know a researcher who heard the rattle sound
It's
and
very,
assumed
it's very
that
small.
it was just a bunch
there are
of
four
baby
of
burrowing
us
owls and
residents,
stuck his hand in the
and
burrow, and
two of them are
he was
nonverbal.
fine. He was okay.
And
But there was a
it's
hospital.
pretty flat around here, although they've been running the TV on the
So
World
that they
Cup,
do
and I
have
enjoy
ways of
that.
defending themselves. As they grow, they start
Yeah,
practicing flying and leaving the burrow, and that's why
yeah.
being these good breeding
At
birds
Mexico.
they don't just need one burrow. They need a good,
Oh, I think.
safe burrow for the breeding burrow, but then they
Yeah,
also need
I think that
ancillary burrows
the
around
U.S. and Mexico game
for the
is
young
this
to
evening,
practice
isn't
flying
it?
too. And so we made an effort to make sure that there were plenty of satellite burrows around the
That sounds like
for
it.
them
Yeah.
to use. And it's a gradual process that they start moving further and further away from the breeding burrow.
Well, yeah.
Next slide.
I'm not. I mean, soccer is interesting
But
to watch. It's a fun
big
game,
thing.
and all those people.
And,
This guy says, "Run and run and run and run." They never
their
stop.
reproductive
But
strategy is one of those
oh,
feast and famine
not so much.
strategies.
Not
They
like
lay
football, anyway.
young so that in those years
but-
when there happens to be a good prey population, that they have the possibility of fledging.
Yeah, I've seen.
And,
I've seen that too.
You know, there's some real advantages.
See, I forgot what I was going to say.
those
Oh,
years
yeah.
when you're able to put that many owls out. A lot of years, though, aren't those optimal best years, and so they lose a lot of chicks. But the parents work very hard to provision the nest, and at first it's the male doing it by himself. The female spends more of her time in the burrow, but then it's both parents trying to keep up with growing chicks. And an interesting thing that we were tracking individual owls very closely, and so we were calculating survival and mortality rates, and found that the mortality of the adult male was quite a bit higher than the adult females. Being the main food provider, it exposed male owls to danger more often because they were out there foraging. But it was also the strain and stress of it was just hard on their bodies. And so in the end, as we were building our population of owls, recognizing that having successful breeding adults was really important too, we started providing supplemental food. Not so much, it was for the chicks too, but also to support the adults. Next slide. A few comments about conservation. This is the type of place that I was working at the zoo. California grasslands. We are lucky to have in San Diego to have quite a lot of open space. Although, unfortunately, the places where owls like to live are also the places where we like to develop and put our own houses. So this particular grassland is along the 215 as you drive up into Riverside. I've been doing that drive now for 15 years. And for any of you who have been doing it for longer, it's been changing dramatically with housing developments. And then the farther north you go with big box warehouses. So when I do that drive, the feeling of seeing habitat being lost is almost a visceral, ugh. Next slide. This is a map of locations in San Diego County where we used to have burrowing owls, or currently do. This is the map put together by the beloved curator at the Natural History Museum, Phil Unit. And it shows that the red locations are places where there were breeding owls, so not just wintering, but breeding owls before the mid-1990s. And if they're in red, those are places that have blinked out more recently. So when I came on and started doing this work, we were down to, there had been 3 pretty reliable locations. By the time I started work, we were down to 1 reliable breeding location, and that's down on Otay Mesa, which has its own set of really unique and complicated challenges. And that was the purpose, the driving reason behind the translocation program. Some of the work that I did was to help identify likely locations for new breeding populations, and then the team would begin the work of establishing owl colonies there. Next slide. Some of the work that we did was to develop a habitat suitability model, and that's what I'm showing here. And it just shows that the areas that are in darker green are those areas that are predicted to be better for burrowing owls. Areas that don't have a color aren't that suitable. And the small areas outlined in pink, that's our open space network. And so in the game of overlaying the two and looking for places that are both conserved and also good habitat, that was what we were trying to do. But the basic challenge is that when you just look at San Diego County, you think, oh, there's a lot of space available that could be good for burrowing owls. But then, next slide, you overlay urban development and you see the problem. This is, and I should have mentioned, this is a map specifically of North County, so that's Lake Hodges over there. If there are places that you know that you'd like to look at. Next slide. I've been talking, all of my experience came out of the San Diego Zoo's Burrowing Owl Recovery Program. And I haven't been connected to them for several years now, but they're still going strong. They are supporting burrowing owls in San Diego. They have really successfully built a population out at a state ecological reserve out at Rancho Jamul. That's near Jamul. And it's possible to make donations to that program. There is a way of doing a direct donation to the Burrowing Owl Recovery Program through the zoo's donation website. I like going to the zoo's webpage because they have burrowing owl webcams, and so the webcams show one of these above and below ground burrow systems. These are owls that are at the safari park, and one cam is above ground and one cam is below ground. There have been times in the breeding season when it's been really fun to watch the eggs and to watch the female taking care of them. And the next slide. There's also a citizen science opportunity, and I guess the QR code isn't entirely there, but we'll make sure that it's posted and available. This is called Wild Watch, and as part of our program, we use, not me anymore, but we did, and still do use a network of game cameras to keep an eye on the wild owls that are occupying places like Otay Mesa. And when I was there, that program was generating over 2 million photos a year. And they really needed help. It's difficult to process that many photos even now. There are things that are best detected with the human eye. And so this is a portal where it's possible to be led through the process, to be assigned a reasonable batch of photos, and to help distinguish, are there owls there or not, how many owls, and maybe one other piece of information that the researchers need. And it's a crowdsourcing so that you can just do as much as you feel comfortable doing, and others are the same, and it adds up. So I thought I would offer that too as an opportunity. Thanks. There's the QR code. And so that's my last slide with content, but if you go to the next one. So I know I didn't cover everything. I'm happy to take questions.
So, threats from global warming and El Nino, and are there particular diseases that the burrowing owl is prone to?
The question was, are they vulnerable to climate warming and El Nino? It was a two-parter. The other question was, are there diseases that they're vulnerable to? In terms of climate effects, during a heavy rain event, burrows can flood. And so if the burrow is dug in a clay soil that holds water, and if the rain hits at the wrong time, that can really be a problem. So we did lose some clutches of eggs to flooding. Part of that is a natural event that has always happened, but as we get more frequent and more intense precipitation events, it's likely to be more of a problem. And then in terms of parasites, in terms of diseases, parasites were the main problem that I experienced, and that had to do with we were struggling with a species of mite that would attach itself around the soft tissue of the adults, and sometimes in such a great amount that it would impact the vision and the foraging ability of the adult. So that is the kind of way that other organisms in the ecosystem that are on their own cycles of increasing and decreasing. There are some years when the parasite load is really heavy, and that's really tough on the owls.
Besides chocolate mouse cake.
They will forage on anything they can catch, any insect, lizards. They're pretty opportunistic. I'm trying to think, even any rodent, any kind of rodent, they'll happily go after. I do remember one year was an especially heavy June bug year, the large-bodied green metallic beetles, and we found a lot of those in owl pellets, which was kind of fun. But they're not very picky. Jeff?
Do they predate on ground squirrels?
They do. The question was, do they predate on ground squirrels? And especially young ground squirrels, they will go after them, you bet. But everybody is trying to eat young ground squirrels. It's a food web.
Is there any way to try to attract them to your yard or property if you are one of those green areas on your map?
So the question is there any way to attract them to your yard if you live in an area that has good suitability? There would be a couple of ways. We have wintering owls that come in every winter, so it's much easier to see and to interact with owls in the winter months. These are migratory birds that are coming down from places like Montana and Idaho and Utah. They come down the flyway, they fly through Las Vegas, believe it or not. I know this because we had translocators on some of them, and then they winter in San Diego. And what they need is some below ground protection. It doesn't need to be very fancy, but I would encourage you all to consider the natural power of burrowing mammals. Ground squirrels are still not most people's favorite animal, especially not to have in your yard, but they're the engineer. They're the one that creates the homes for everybody else. But especially in the winter, migrating owls just need a place that will provide reliable protection. And that's when you, in agricultural areas especially, you find them living in PVC pipes and that kind of thing. Artificial burrows are usually made out of PVC pipes and irrigation boxes or wooden boxes or with a T-perch, just like they were showing in the, in the book.
There was a question online, do they decorate the outside of their burrows?
The burrows are decorated with dung, and that is to, and I'll repeat the question. The question was, are the burrows decorated? And owls decorate the burrows with dung to mask their scent, so that's pretty utilitarian and practical. They also, just from the stint of perching in and around the burrow, they leave a lot of whitewash. It's just the word for their drop-ins. And so reliable, high-quality burrows end up painted white with whitewash, and that's a signal to other owls, oh, hey, this is a good burrow. So that's maybe the best form of decoration that I can think of. A question in the back?
Yeah. Do they have an ability to ward off snakes? I imagine being in burrows, like they would run into them a lot.
The question is, do they have the ability to ward off snakes? And that defensive behavior that I mentioned by chicks is the only one that I really know of. Squirrels, they have more complex ways of chasing off a rattlesnake, but owls have a narrower suite of behaviors for doing that.
What are their natural predators?
The question is, what is their natural predator? The predation events that we recorded on cameras, the number one predator was ravens. I liked ravens a lot more before I started watching them carrying away chicks. And then that's followed by Cooper's hawks. Cooper's hawks are small, they're in every neighborhood, and they're very effective predators.
Since there were a lot of daytime photos, are they mostly nocturnal, like most owls seem to be?
The question is, these were daytime photos, are they also nocturnal? After all this time, I am not really sure when the owls sleep. They're active during the day, they're active during the night, so I think they must just rest when they're able to. So they're diurnal. They do prey. They do forage and catch prey at night.
What is their lifespan, and typically do they have a long wingspan? How good a flyer are they typically?
The question is, what's the lifespan? And I think lifespan, a pretty long lifespan, is in the neighborhood of 8 years, 7 to 8 years. And then the other question was about flying ability. They're a small owl, so wingspan, let's say it's, what is that, 1.5 feet, 18 inches? They are aerodynamic enough to migrate long distance, and they have the owl's ability to be effective predators. These are small predators, so they don't have some of the really amazing abilities to maneuver in the air and catch prey like you'd see from a falcon. But their flying ability is pretty nimble.
We heard in this story about some kind of protection until the owls reached a certain ability. do they have some kind of protections in this area before developers can come in?
The question is about conservation protection, having to do with development. Are they protected? And there are state laws that prohibit developers from developing land that has a nest. The conservation protections are limited to those places that are occupied by burrowing owls, and only hold while the burrow is occupied by a breeding family. So once they're out, then the company will send consultants, biological consultants, to observe the nest, see if it's still occupied. Once it's been deemed unoccupied, then it can be developed.
How often do burrowing owls have to consult their realtor to move?
The question is, how often do burrowing owls consult a realtor?
No, I mean, how often do they move?
They will use as long as a burrow is providing them with reliable support, as long as they're being successful in that location, they'll stay. It's the same for wintering spots too. You know, you think of that as somehow being less important, but they do have to survive through the winter to be able to return and breed. And if they have an established place, either in the breeding season or in the winter season, they're going to return to it until something disrupts that. And that could be an especially bad year. They might decide to go somewhere else. Or it can be something more like a forced eviction, where the burrow is no longer available for them.
Are they monogamous?
The question is, are they monogamous? I think that the genetic answer is it's kind of messy, but they form pretty strong pair bonds that hold through the breeding season. And if they have made a bond that is successful, they come back to the burrow, they find their mate, and they'll do it again.
How does the burrowing owl interact with any other owls, like a barn owl or a great horned owl, if they're kind of overlapping their areas, or are they prey predator?
The question is, what is the relationship of the burrowing owl, since it's a small owl, to other larger owls? And the answer is that that's a problem for burrowing owls. So they are preyed on by those larger, heavier owls. We did at one point, the zoo team did some, we called it predator training. And that was conducted with a taxidermied great horned owl on loan from the Natural History Museum.
How long does it take the process how long are they in the burrow for until they leave the burrow and then fly?
It's been 6 years. I think it is on the order. The question is, how long are they in the burrow and how long before they fledge and start flying? I believe they stay underground for the first 2 to 3 weeks. And then it's a race to fledge and begin flying as quickly as you can. But generally, if the breeding season begins around February or March, it's essentially done and concluded by June to July, maybe by July.
When the breeding season is over, do the paired owls continue living together, or does the male take off, or the male take off?
So the question is, what happens at the end of the breeding season? Towards the end of the breeding season, the adults will stay as long as the chicks are there. The chicks are slowly, gradually moving away from the burrow, spending less time at the breeding burrow. and at some point they will all feel a seasonal cue to disperse. So sometime in the late summer, early fall, you get into the unpredictable season where the owls all move away from the burrow and they go in different directions. So the paired owls will not be together through the winter season. They're more solitary in the winter. In San Diego, which has the resident population, sometimes the male will stick around the breeding burrow to maintain his claim on it.
So during that, are they finding other burrows, or are they sleeping in trees, or kind of what is their...
The question is, what do they do during the winter? And they will often find another underground type structure that provides some protection. And that can be, there's a wide variety of ways they can find that. It often happens that there will be an owl living in the rocks on the beach, and all of the birders will flock to take photos. That's a San Diego thing that happens. In the Imperial Valley, you'll find them living in concavities in irrigation ditches. There are a range of natural type structures that will give them the protection they need for the winter. And that's for surviving the winter, and then at the beginning of the next breeding season, they reconvene for breeding at the burrow.
Is the use of rodenticides impacting their population noticeably?
The question is the use of rodenticides impacting the population noticeably? It doesn't, and the answer is it doesn't help. Rodenticides are really strong toxins. They're hard on anything that ingests them. I'm not sure, maybe we had one owl that we thought had experienced a rodenticide poisoning. But if you take a look at the bigger picture, which is overall across their range, declining populations, breeding areas blinking out, the species should be listed under the ESA at least at the threatened level, and maybe be considered at the endangered level as well. In California, they're just listed as a species of special concern, but that needs to be reevaluated. It's not quite reflecting the truth of the situation. So in that respect, rodenticides are not helping. And if we're trying to support a population that's already struggling, why not do everything you can to protect it?
Where are the largest remaining populations of burrowing owls?
Good question. The question is where's the largest remaining population of burrowing owls? I think it's here in Southern California. So the reason why the owl has not been downlisted in the state of California is because we have a large population of them in the Imperial Valley. That is a subsidized system. It's subsidized with water that supports a pretty good prey base. The agricultural infrastructure provides owls with burrow locations. So you have lots of breeding pairs in the irrigation ditches of the Imperial Valley. That is a system that is under pressure from solar development, partly, and other types of developments, and also from changes in water availability for agriculture. So it has been a stable population for a long time, but that's not guaranteed into the future.
What diameter PVC pipe do they like?
What diameter PVC pipe do they like? I can visualize it. 6 inch? Go ahead.
Do they pursue gophers?
Question is, do they pursue gophers? They would love to have a nice, tasty gopher. But what they need is that fully stocked system of, you know, a good gopher population, a good squirrel population, so that there is enough in the food web for them to live off. Any other questions? Well, it's been a lot of fun speaking to you. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for all of your questions.
Do you plan to stick around for a few minutes, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have additional questions you just can't get off your mind, Sarah will be here for a few minutes, but I think it's pretty amazing that she satisfied the curiosity of this group of people to the point that they ran out of questions. So let's give her a second round of applause.